Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we're going to look at how we can create our own fabric Iray shaders in Daz Studio. So let's get to it. So welcome to this tutorial about creating your own fabric Iray shaders for any clothing that you have, whether it's old clothing or new clothing. I'm going to show you today how you can create your own fabric Iray shaders. So I've got my figure here, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a dress. But before we do that, I just want to show you my settings, because everyone always goes on about my settings. Here's my settings, nothing fancy, they're the default settings. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing you want to consider before you actually think about what you want the material to look like is to go to Google and actually do some research. So the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at leather. How can we create leather clothing? So if you go to Google, and I've just typed in leather clothing, you can see many examples here, different colors as well. We've got black, blue, brown, your typical leather, red as well. So I'm going to click on this jacket here just out of curiosity, and so we're going to have a look at this clothing here, the leather clothing, this leather jacket. So what can you see on there? Okay, so now I know I need black color, possibly very dark gray color to emulate this clothing. And if you look at the shine here. So the shine here is white, so my glossiness needs to be white. So now I know that my color needs to be black and my glossy color needs to be white. Now how much gloss I need will depend on what it looks like inside Daz, but we now have a better idea of what our clothing needs to look like, what the kind of materials of the clothing need to be, the Iray shader kind of particular parts of the Iray shader that we need to look into. So we go back into Daz Studio. Okay, so I'm going to add a dress. So I'm going to go to my smart content. Now what I'm going to do is when I go to my wardrobe here, I've got loads of clothes, but we're not going to do any of these. What I'm going to show you is you can actually use older clothing. So to use older clothing is if I tick this box here, filter by context, if I untick it, it will give me all the clothing. So clothing that's like for older Genesis, so Genesis 2, Genesis 3 and just Genesis by itself. So the one I'm going to use is this one here, 008 dress. I'm going to double click that and it's going to give me this box here, and it's saying this item is unsupported. Which one was it originally designed for? I'm guessing it's Genesis female 2. And then it says what type of item is this. So this is going to automatically try and fit the clothing to our Genesis 8 female character. So what type of item is it? I'm going to click on this. So it's a dress and it's knee length. So there's our knee. So it's not actually knee length. It's just above knee, but the best one to choose is dress and knee length. If it was trousers or something else, then you would choose full body. And obviously if you was like a shirt or something, then you would choose shirt, which I'll show you later on anyway. So dress is knee length, accept, and then Daz does his magic and tries his best to kind of figure out to fit our Genesis 8 character with the dress. So just wait for that to do, shouldn't take too long. Still thinking about it? Thinking a bit too long if you ask me, shouldn't take that long. Okay, there we go, it's kind of done it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the underwear because I didn't need that. The only reason I had the underwear there is because I didn't want YouTube to freak out about having a naked figure in YouTube. That's the only reason I had the underwear there. So I'm just going to take that off. So I'm going to just go to the Genesis 8 character and just hide those. So I don't need the bra, I don't need the panties, because I've got the dress. Okay, so here's our dress here. I've clicked on my dress. You'll notice when I go to surfaces, editor, and on the dress, it's the old dress. You can see it's not using the Iray shader, it's using the 3D light shader. So what we need to do is to convert that. So we go to presets, shaders, and then Iray Uber base, just double click that. There's our dress. So now when I go to editor, we've got the Iray Uber base added on there. Great. So if we go back to our image, what am I looking for? So I need black base color. So start with black. So let's go back. So my base color here needs to be black. We'll go black. Right, there's my base color. It's black. Great. Now we need to sort out the glossiness. So we need to go down here. My glossy layered weight, I'm going to put that all the way to 1 because I'm trying to emulate leather. And then the roughness. So we're going to play around with the roughness. Now if you have too much roughness, what happens is you get this kind of sheen, and that's not what we're looking for. We want these kind of like little kind of glossiness here around. So that's what we're trying to emulate. So my glossy roughness needs to be actually less than that. So my glossy color is correct, it's white, which is what it needs to be. And we're kind of looking around about, I would say probably 0.25, might be more, but we'll play with that. We'll play with that later. So at the moment, it doesn't look really leathery at the moment. And the way we can make it leathery is to use a normal map. So if I go down here, a normal map, there is no map. I'm going to click on this arrow here. I'm going to go to browse, and I've got leather here. What I'm going to do is go to my textures. I'm going to get a leather texture. Now these textures, these maps, if you don't understand at the moment, that's fine. There will be a YouTube tutorial coming up soon that will explain what these maps are, because I didn't understand when I first started and it was really doing my head in, but I managed to figure it out, and I'm going to go over that in the next video. So next week's video will be all about maps and how we can use it to really manipulate anything you want in Daz Studio, and it's a very, very powerful tool that I think you'll find very valuable. So I'm just going to go to my textures, my texture pack here. There's a leather one here somewhere. There we go. And the one I'm looking for is these texture packs, by the way, I have bought, or I actually purchased for them. I'll put the link in the description box below if you want to go and buy these. They're very, very good, highly done, very well done. So I'm looking for a normal map. Here it is. That looks like leather, so there's a normal map. Okay, so at the moment, that normal map, the actual tiles on the normal map are far too big and I need to make them smaller. So what we can do is, if we go down here, horizontal tiles, we can manipulate the horizontal tiles. So if I change this to a higher number, say 5, if you have a look at this when I change it, make sure your eyes on this and not on the what I'm doing here. So when I change that, you'll see that it changes. Yep. And then I want the vertical tiles to be 5 as well. Okay, so there it looks a bit more leathery now, doesn't it? It looks a bit more leathery. And that's that kind of like leather thing. So now I need to go back up to my glossiness and probably glossy roughness and change that around a bit maybe. Kind of get that leathery look. I think that looks pretty good. Just let it render for a bit. That looks like leather to me. Maybe a bit more on the glossy roughness. You could play around with the settings. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes lower. That looks pretty good leather to me, a black leather. Now we can also change the glossy anisotropy, so we can change it from the direction of the light. So if I kind of start moving that around, you'll start seeing it move a bit. There we go, the direction of the light. See, instead of being here, it's moved over here now on this side. So that's something you can play around with. And obviously it depends on where the light is. So where the light is you're coming from. If you're using a spotlight, if you're using a dome rotation, it will affect that. So I'll show you that very shortly. So as you can see, it's kind of moved here, the glossiness. And we can change the rotations as well. So the rotation of it here as well, how much we want to rotate it. Now because of that, we have to go back up and maybe change the roughness a bit. So probably get rid of the roughness, and then that will give her our leather there. So there you go, that looks a bit leathery. What else we can do if you really want to go a bit further than that is you can add a bit of metallicity. So we can go down here and we go metal flakes. So we can add a bit of metal flakes. Just a tiny bit. And you can see the colours changed a bit now, so that's probably a bit too much. Just want a tiny bit to kind of give that leather effect. So you can play with the roughness as well here, the metallic flakes roughness as well, to really redefine that leather look. That's something if you want to do a bit extra. You don't have to if you don't want to, but that's something you can look into as an extra to kind of give you that leathery effect. And also you can play with the metallic flake size, so we can really go up and push that up. And then you can see the difference there, the kind of shininess coming out through the metallic flakes. But in essence, all you need is the actual base color, some glossiness, full glossiness, roughness, the anisotropy, the direction and the rotations of the light. That's all you need to do to kind of give the leather look. So if I change the rotations, the dome rotation, at the moment it's on 0. If I change it to 45 degrees, you'll see it will change. The light will change. So light's kind of coming this way. You can see it now, the light is coming from this angle and it's going that way. You can see the shadow here. So if I did it 90 degrees, the light affects what it's going to look like. So there's our leather dress. So that's how we make our leather dress. Obviously I can change the color if you wanted your classic kind of brown color. So we can click on there and then kind of reduce the value of that. Probably a bit darker brown. And there's kind of your classic leather look. A bit more darker maybe. There you go, your classic leather look. We've done that there. No Iray shader we've paid for. We've done it ourselves. Okay, so I'm just going to turn that rotation back to normal. So that's how we do the leather. Very simple, very effective. You can do that on any dress you want to do. So now we're going to look at how we can create our our satin kind of silk look. So I'm going to go back to Google, silk fabric shader. So I'm going to go back to Google. I've done a search here, satin. So if you have a look here, if you have a look, for example, at this red one here, you can see that, okay, so for our base color, we need red. But, however, our glossy color is not going to be white, because if you have a look at the glossiness here, what color is it? It's red. So what we need to do is we need a darker base color and we need a lighter red color for our glossiness, and that will give us the kind of silk satin kind of effect that we're looking for. So back to Daz Studio. I'm going to use the same dress to show that we can do it with that. So I'm going to do that now. So what we need is I just need to take off metallicity, because with satin there is no metallicity. Just take that off. And the normal map, we don't need that leather normal map because the satin is a very soft material. We don't need any map for that. So I'm going to do none for that. And the color we said was red. So I'm going to choose a darker color red. So here's my darker color red. I might go a bit more darker. There's our red. And for the glossy color, I need it to be red, a brighter red. So I'm going to go full red here. I'm going to click on OK. So you can see it's slowly starting to look like a satin material. The only thing we need to do now is figure out the glossiness. So our glossy color is full. Our roughness probably needs to come down a bit. And now you can see that kind of satin, there we go, that kind of shine there. So we're probably looking around about, yeah, 0.18, maybe 0.2 you can get away with. And now our anisotropy, we need to change the direction. So I need to change it so it's kind of shining in the right area. That depends on your lighting, obviously. So we're probably looking here. Let's have a look at the rotations. The rotations might be too much. You can see it moving there. Actually, I want it around about there. So there's our rotation. So there you go. There's our rotations. Probably want it less than that, to be honest. Yeah. Again, it depends on where your light is coming from. So our light is coming from right here to the left because our shadows here. So with the dome rotation, if I change that to 45 degrees, the actual satin, the way it appears, will look different. 45 degrees. There you go. That probably looks a bit better. So I can move the glossy anisotropy rotations a bit more. So there we go. And there we go, we got our kind of satin kind of look there. Very, very simple, very effective. Again, you can do this with any clothing you wish to do. Okay, so the last thing we're going to look at is our kind of lace, kind of see-through clothing that we're going to do. And for that, I'm going to turn back on the underwear because I don't want YouTube to go crazy about having nudity on there and all the rest of it. So I'm just going to turn that on. So at the moment, what's happened here is we've got layers of clothing. Another trick I'm going to teach you now is we've got layers of clothing. So we've got the first layer, which is the underwear, and then we've got the dress, which is coming over it. Now, there is a trick around this. Now, what we can do is if we click on the dress, because that's supposed to be our top layer, we can actually layer the clothing. So we can have layers of clothing technically. And the way we do this is we need to add a push modifier. So I'm going to add the push modifier and I'll explain exactly how that works. So I've got my dress selected here in the scene tab. I'm going to go to my edit, object, geometry, and you'll see here add push modifier, and click on that. And it says give it a name. I'm not going to give it a name, that's fine, and just click OK. And you'll notice that the dress kind of has automatically kind of fitted. So I'll explain in a bit. What I want to do is just quickly just add a new camera because I want that default perspective view there. So I'm going to show you now with the perspective of what exactly has happened. So actually we'll just get out of Iray mode just to speed things up. So if I can just take this camera around, you get a better idea of what exactly is happening. So what's happening is that our dress here, if we go to our dress here, click on our dress and we go to our parameters tab, you'll see an extra option here, mesh offset. So what that is we can manipulate kind of like the layers of the clothing. So if I do 0 for the push modifier, we're literally kind of intersecting with the clothing, the actual underwear. We don't want that. We want it to kind of be above the clothing. So it's kind of creating layers like you would have in Photoshop. So what we would do, we would increase the size slowly. So as I increase the size, start with 0.5. Let's see what that looks like. 0.5, lucky guess, that appears to be good. Let me just check the front view here if it's okay. That's pretty good. If I went to something like 0.3, don't know. Oh, that's pretty good as well. We see a bit of poking here of the original clothing. You can always sort that out in Photoshop or any other software that you use to kind of hide that. So maybe try 0.4, see how that looks. So let's take a look around, make sure it looks okay. Okay, there's a bit of poking at the back. That doesn't matter because we're pretty good there. So that's what you can do with the push modifier. You can kind of add layers. Obviously, if you add too many layers, this is what happens. So say, for example, if you had layers and layers of clothing and the push modifier had to be something like 2, the dress gets ridiculously thick and it looks a bit ridiculous. So if I go back to my original canvas, you can see it looks very thick. As probably would happen if you had many layers of clothing, it would get thicker. So it does actually kind of try to simulate as it would if you were wearing several layers of clothing. That's how it would look like. But obviously if you've got like underwear and you've got like a very big push modifier for the dress, it looks a bit ridiculous. So that's the kind of limitations of push modifier. It's very good to use in cases like this where you've just got underwear and you just want to put something over it. That's good for that, but you don't want to do it when you have many layers of clothing, otherwise it looks very ridiculous. So again, we'll go back to the original setting. I can't remember it now. I think it was 0.45. Okay, that looks good. And now we're going to make the dress see-through. So we need to go back to our surfaces and the dress. And what we need to do for this is to make something see-through, you need to use what's the option down here called cutout opacity. Now this used to be called transparency using the 3D light shader, but this is called cutout transparency now. And for cutout transparency, we need to use a texture. Now the texture we need to use needs to be black with black background with white. So black and white. So what happens is with the black, it's like Photoshop. Black it will be concealed, white be revealed. So if I show you an example here, hopefully there'll be something here I can use. We'll try this leather one, displacement map. It may work. Let's have a look. There you go. It has kind of worked. So what's happened is because the displacement map is grey, Daz Studio will use values between greys. Like for example, black is like I'm not showing it at all, and white is I'm going to show it. And then grey is the values in between, which is like I'll show you some of it. And that's the way it kind of works. So it's like transparency. So there you go. That's like you can use that. To do that. So grey values are like intermediary values. So those are like the values in between black and white, and you'll get this kind of like transparent effect here. Now if you wanted to go a bit further with the black and white, I'm going to find one now and show you what the black and white one looks like. See if I can find something here. And I'm going to go back to my texture pack really quickly. The one I like the most is here, Sci-Fi Wall. And it is this one here. Even though it says metallic, you can use any map you want to use in the cutout opacity. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to preview that. So here we go. Here's a preview. So I've got black and white. So what's going to happen is this black is going to be concealed. You won't see that. All you're going to see is this white, which means you're going to see the red outline of this. So when I add this on, you'll see it looks completely different. There you go. And that's what it looks like. And again, we can change the horizontal tiles. So at the moment it's set to 5 from the previous leather one that we did for the leather. So I can go really high. I can probably go 20 and then 20 here. And then when we go into Iray mode, you can see what it looks like. Just give it a second to kick in. And there you go. That's what it looks like. So we got like see-through kind of material for whatever reason you want to use that. Okay, again with the cutout opacity we can reduce that. So if I reduce it, it literally just goes away. No point really using that when we're using a map. Okay, so that's our map, how we can make cutouts. So if I go back to the original, which was, I wonder if it's still here, leather displacement, wasn't it? That's what it looks like with the leather displacement one that we had with the grey intermediary values. So you can see that's what it looks like. So that's why I can have like see-through materials, and you can play with the tiles. So if I went higher, you would just get a bit more tighter look on the actual see-through clothing. So that's how you can create your own shaders. So, okay, so how do we save it? What we need to do is slightly different in this one. Is we're not actually saving a shader per se. We are saving a shader preset, a material preset rather. So we need to go to File, we need to go to Save As, and we go to Material Preset. So here's all my materials I had before. So see through dress, and I'm going to save. And then it asks you which kind of, if there's like two surfaces, it'll ask you which surface you want to save. In this case, we have changed both surfaces. So I'm going to say both, and compress file compresses it. I really wouldn't have, it's up to you if you want that ticked or not. It doesn't really save that much space, but I should have that, I have that ticked off really. It shouldn't be ticked on. Because you can always, when you get to advanced stage, you can start editing the actual text files related to it, which will go into a little bit more detail when we get to that advanced level. So I'm going to click accept. That saved it. So how do I pick my shaders? So when you've added the dress, all you need to do now is when you go to presets, saved files here, you can see, look, I've got my satin one that I did earlier, and I've got my see-through dress here. So I can actually apply it straight from here. Double click here. Here's a satin dress that I did earlier. There you go. And then here's the one we did just a while back, just right now. So there you go. So you don't need to go to smart content and then saved files, and then from here you need to go to presets, and then you will go to materials. You don't need to do that way. You can always go straight from here, presets, saved files, and it would be there as well. So that's how you can do our fabric shaders. I hope you have fun having a go at training your fabric shaders. So I hope you found the information there very useful on how you can create your own fabric Iray shaders. Remember to use Google as your reference material, so type in the material you're trying to recreate for your clothing and then use that as your reference material, as I did in this tutorial. And in next week's video, I'll be demystifying everything about texture maps and all the maps you can do in Daz Studio, so that will be explained in next week's video. Make sure you watch that as well. And if you found value from this video, give it a thumbs up. And any comments or questions you have, make sure you leave it down below. I'm more than happy to answer that as well. And make sure to subscribe as well. It helps the channel out a lot, very, very much. And those of you that have subscribed as well, thank you very much for your support. And I'll see you in next week's video.